she could just discontinue. Or perhaps if I try to encourage her.
So that's what you thought, that you can
exactly
get around her and show her a different life?
You hit the nail right on the
What,
head.
what were you doing anything professionally at the time? Were you working? Did you own a business? What was your lifestyle like?
Well, my background is architecture and engineering.
Architecture, and were you
Yes.
into this when you
Well,
met
at
her?
that time, I was just laid off, and I was headed home because I just left the flats. And that's when I saw her, and we sort of met one another, struck
Met
up a
her
conversation.
downtown?
Yes. So, like I said, early on, I knew that she had that problem, but, you just kind of assume that it's something that person can kind of put down.
Did she express to you her dreams and goals and
Oh,
aspirations?
yes. She's, as you can see, she's very stylish. Her dream is to be a designer. She's a very good
Fashion
seamstress.
design?
Yes. She loves fashion. She loves clothing.
And she communicated that to you early on?
Yes, she did. So my thinking was, well, perhaps you just need some support and encouragement and someone that sort of show you a different lifestyle as opposed to this.
Well, did she admit to you any type of relationship she had prior to you? Like what she been through with men? Did she ever discuss that with you?
Oh, she did, yes. I
What
wish I was aware
was
of
some
that.
of the stuff like she was telling you?
Well, she, of course, had former boyfriends like most adults do. Some made attempts to try to encourage her to get treatment, get help, but it was unsuccessful. But with me, I can tell that she really fell in love with me, and we really got real close. But as time went on, I realized that the addiction is not that simple to conquer.
Not laughing at her. That is the
yes,
truth.
Yes. But see, if you never experienced it before, you don't know.
Right.
Like I said, I'm just thinking, well, just like a person that drinks socially, you can just put it down and rest of the week do your 40
Right. You
hours
had
and
never
go back
been
to
it,
it.
never been around it.
Exactly.
Well,
Totally foreign to
well,
me.
are you from? You can't. Are you from a suburb or something? Because you can see crack done just about anywhere right about now.
Well, to be honest, on that particular side of town, I think it was a little more prevalent, a little bit more out in the open.
Okay.
Okay, I knew about it, but I think like most people, my perception was probably New Jack City type thing.
Okay.
Right, because that's how Hollywood glamorized it, or
Right.
with Cleveland's own Halle Berry when she was in Jungle Fever.
Right.
And you recall the character she played. I think her name was Vivian. She all wild looking and all disheveled. But if you look at Vernice, there's a lot of functional addicts. They don't have to be just from the projects. They could be professional people.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing I tried to address in my book, that addiction has all types of faces. Wealthy,
What type
poor.
of person was she? What type of person was she?
Well, like I said, Vernice loved fashion and design. She loved children, although she never had any of her own. She's a very sociable, outgoing person. She loves music, loved to dance. And she's very good at sewing. So, like most people, she was a normal person, but that was her demon, the addiction.
Did you notice any pronounced insecurities in her?
Well, when she did drugs, I think that's when I really noticed a change in her mood, because she did suffer from mental health issues. In her case, it was constant depression. So like a lot of persons who become addicts, they sort of self-medicate themselves to deal with those negative emotions.
Right.
But the problem is, just like with heroin and the opioid addiction, they get hooked.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in her case, trying to deal with her depression.
Did she ever give you any type of inclination of what those circumstances that might have made her depressed?
She did tell me that she had lost her mother, and that was very hard for her to deal with. A lot of times it's either a loss of job or some sort of upheaval in a person's life where they can't get over
She was
it.
real close to her mom?
Oh, very close, yes.
Oh, so they were real tight. So it threw her mom died of natural causes?
Yes.
And
And she was her first child. She was
First
the eldest.
child. She must have died at a relatively fair age.
Yes.
Her mom did.
Right.
And that affected her mentally where she really couldn't get over it.
Yes, that, and along with the fact that a former boyfriend introduced her to crack cocaine.
See,
and
that
often that's
always
what starts
happens.
it out.
You
Yes.
see what happens when you do that? You don't know, you break up with the woman down the line, she might get murdered by somebody who care even less than you did. So we got to be careful out there.
And that is one of the cautionary tales in my publication. You introduce someone to something they've never done before, and if it's highly addictive, which
Yeah.
crack cocaine is, you've altered their life path, their journey.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, they can go on and they can break up and separate, and he go his way. She's still battling this addiction.
Yeah.
And that was probably 30 years ago
What do you
when he
think she
introduced it
fell
to
in
her.
love with you about and for?
I think the fact that I'm a pretty well-grounded person. I don't do drugs. I'm very motivated, positive, very encouraging. And, of course, some of the things that she likes to do in terms of going out to movies and to dance. Right,
What-
and that, too. We share that in common. So.
What were some of your means to try to reach her and get to her and to express belief in her to believe in herself? What were some of the things you were saying that try to help her out?
Well, early on, I would say if you really want to spend some time together, and if this relationship means something to you, you can't have both. You cannot dance with the devil and be with me. And in the beginning, that sort of worked, kind of encouraged her. But like I said, addiction is a brain disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually it won out, and I really didn't know anything about treatment.
Yeah.
I kind of found out after the attack.
Yeah.
And after the attack happened, that's when I really pushed her towards getting some help.
Right.
And she did that. She pursued it.
What was the last straw? What made you say, well, you know what?
Well, like I mentioned to you earlier, in my book, I'm very candid about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
And as we're all aware, when a person's an addict, they'll practically do anything in order to get money to get those drugs.
Right.
Her way to do it was solicitation of prostitution.
Right.
And certainly in a relationship, that's a deal
Yeah,
breaker.
yeah, okay.
That's a deal breaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, along with the other behavior of always up constantly for hours. And here I am with a job who need rest. It's like, no, I can't deal with this.
Right, right.
So I reached a breaking point. I had to let her go.
Was she hurt?
Yeah, she was hurt. You know, she was hurt by it.
Do you think did that sink her further into her addiction as far as your knowledge is concerned?
I wouldn't say so. The addiction was already there. It's a beast.
Yeah.
That was her demon.
Yeah.
So I'm sure she was probably hurt by the fact that, as she will always put it, she lost a good man. But Vernice was persistent too. She would always call me every other day to take her back, give her another chance, which often addicts will do.
Very much so, where you caved in, and you said, "Well, I'm gonna go check up on it," because you
Exactly.
still had love for her.
Absolutely.
So you went down. She was living in Garden Valley. Now, if you don't know about Garden Valley if you're born in Cleveland, but that is a war zone. All kind of things going down. There's probably a number of Anthony Sowells somewhere down there. But it's really good people down there, too. Let me put a disclaimer. I'm sorry. Really good, caring, loving people that support everyday people in the community. It's probably more people like that than it is Anthony Sowell type. So don't let me, stop you from going down in Garden Valley. But just be aware when you go down in Garden Valley, it go down. So now, you wasn't aware when you first met her of the drug use. You was kind of naive. Well, coming down to the projects, you're not going to be naive to a lot of things at all. But what you were naive to, the fact that very day, you were telling me behind the scene that actually that day when you went down to Garden Valley to check on Vernice, she was actually being held against her will in a place down there?
Yes. Let me give you the timeline.
Okay.
She calls me at 5:30 Sunday, June 18, 2006.
Okay.
We talk for about a half an hour. Conversation ends at 6. She's down in Garden Valley on East 7th and Kinsman doing what she does. She's approached by Anthony Sowell. I already made a decision listening to her pity and sorrow. I said, okay, let me go and check on her and try to encourage her again.
Yeah.
I reached Garden Valley about 7:30.
Okay.
Now, I'm walking the circuit because I'm saying to myself, she didn't say she was leaving the area. So I'm walking between 79th and 70th Street, making a complete circuit. I find out the next day, after she regained consciousness 15 hours later, what happened and why I couldn't find her. She was
What
inside.
did it happen? What happened?
She was lured by Anthony Sowell to a vacant house about 10 minutes from where he saw her.
Now, hold on. Before you go any further, she told you this upon her coming to consciousness at the hospital.
Yes, this is the next morning.
Okay. All
The
right.
next day.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, but now prior to that, I'm still in Garden Valley. I actually stayed from 7:30 that evening to 1:30 in the morning. Because
Wow. Circling the area?
well, I'm visiting her friends and her family. I'm
Okay.
spending time there,
spending time in
right,
there,
waiting
okay.
for her to resurface because we just talked.
Good man. Some of y'all
Okay.
y'all gonna want CD Newton number after this. Y'all gonna want his number, baby. Go ahead, CD.
Well, our instincts tell you, something's wrong. All right, where is she? All her friends and family are saying, well, we saw her earlier. She did not say she was leaving the area. So I knew something instinctively was wrong. So I said to myself, let me position myself at the intersection of East 79th and Kinsman so I can see in all four directions.
Okay.
At about 9 o'clock, this is the summer, so it's just getting dark,
Yeah.
a guy approaches me and stands right outside the bus shelter.
Wow.
Now, I'm thinking to myself, I'm 2 years in of visiting Vernice from 2004 to now 2006. I pretty much know all the locals in the area. I've never seen this guy before. And I'm getting a very terrible vibe from him. I looked at him with the intent to ask him the same thing I ask everybody else.
Did you see this
Do you
girl?
know Vernice? Have you seen her?
What stopped you from asking him?
Because his energy just felt bad, just terrible.
Like, don't ask me. Was
Exactly.
he menacing? Was he threatening?
He just had this cold
Was he
look on
scary
his
looking?
face.
Cold look on his face.
Yes. And he's leaving the area. So I said, well, maybe he doesn't really know her, and I've never seen him before. So after about 2 minutes or so, he gets on the number 14 eastbound bus. And I'm saying to myself, okay, well, he just told a stranger, no biggie. 2.5 years later, his picture appears on the front page of the newspaper, October 31st, 2009 to be exact.
Wow. Could you imagine what the conversation and how it would have went had CD Newton approached Sowell and say, hey, man, do you know Vernice Crutcher? Have you seen her? Then what would have transpired after that? Because he probably would have said some kind of lie.
Exactly.
We probably
right.
would have
Yes.
picked up on it.
He would have denied it, went on his way. But here's where a thorough investigation would have paid off.
Okay.
Had the police had better communication with her, while he attacked her in the house, he took all of her jewelry, her watch, her earrings, her necklace. There's a photograph inside the book that I got from another author. He sent it to me. His book was called The House of Horrors. I'm reading his book, based on these murders, yeah, I have a picture of his book. His name is Robert Saberner. So he has a photograph that the coroner has released of the Imperial Avenue victim's jewelry. Lo and behold, is Vernice's watch near the coroner's ruler that was taken in 2006 inside the abandoned house. The Imperial Avenue murders happened a year after that. They start with Crystal Dozier from 2007 to 2009.
Wow.
So I'm saying to myself, that's just too much coincidence here. I go to the internet, pull up this photograph, and it hit me. That guy was Anthony Sowell, who left the abandoned house under the cover of darkness just in case Vernice's body gets discovered, because he's assuming that she's dead.
Because he cut into her face.
Yes.
So much so her eye could not be saved.
Right, and he choked her, so she's unconscious. He beat her, he cut her up, and the vacant house has no electricity, so it's dark. She's motionless, she's bleeding, so he presumes she's dead. So he leaves. He's got her personal effects on his person. He takes it home. And like I said, 3.5 years later, exactly, trophies. Because little did we know, I'm thinking, well, if he robs you of your jewelry, by now he probably done sold them.
Yeah.
But the reality is,
He wasn't a crackhead.
pardon me?
He wasn't a smoker.
No, he was. He was a crackhead too.
Okay.
The picture that appeared in the front page of the Plain Deal, October 31st, 2009, I showed it to Vernice. I said, Vernice, because I'm a reader, I read everything about him, and I said, the other survivors are describing the same scenario as you. Is this your attacker? Vernice looked at him and said, and she stared at the photograph on the front page of the Plain Dealer, and she said, no, I don't really think that's him. I said, are you sure? The Plain Dealer described Anthony Sowell as 6 feet tall, 155 pounds. That's a pretty tall, lanky kind of guy. But I pulled up Anthony Sowell's psych evaluation that was done 4 years earlier, September 7, 2005. On page 6, it describes Sowell as 6 feet tall, 195 pounds. So I'm saying to myself, between 2005 and 2009, in 4 years, why did he lose 40 pounds? Because Anthony Sowell also smoked crack cocaine too.
Sitting right here with author C.D. Newton of the book My Sister's Keeper, right here, the Cleveland serial killer untold story. And it is one heck of a story. So much so I think that if police really had looked into and investigated the claims of C.D. Newton's former lover right here, I believe maybe those 11 women might be here today. We don't want to drag any police under the bus because we don't know what deterred or hindered that investigation. Personally, I don't. So I don't want to throw any policemen under the bus. But we do know that it wasn't properly investigated enough because this woman, her story seems dead on to the other women, you know, on how the man attacked her, right, C.D. Newton?
Absolutely.
And basically has the same type of description, but you said you had showed her a picture of Anthony, and at the time, he was 40 pounds lighter, right?
The one that appeared in the plain dealer, yes.
The one in the plain dealer was 40 pounds lighter, but he was on crack cocaine, which means he could have, you know, lost that weight in that time. Now, let's fast forward to that time. She didn't told you what happened, the attack. You didn't know it was Anthony, but you, by happenstance, you happened to see him after the attack took place. Didn't know what was going on until later.
Yes, as a matter of fact, once Anthony Sowell was arrested, I went to the internet and pulled up this photograph. That's when he hit me. This is the guy that crossed paths with me that very same evening at that bus shelter.
That's when it hit you. You remembered that face.
Yes, and then I showed it to Vernice because Vernice was not with me when I pulled up on the internet. She was in rehab, Hitchcock for Women.
How was her demeanor? Did you feel like she really didn't know if that was him, or you could sense she knew but she didn't want to deal with it?
That's it, exactly. She stared at the one in the plain dealer far too long, as if her subconscious mind was trying to make a connection, but she couldn't. And because I knew Vernice so well, I said to myself, there's something off here. And that's when I pulled up the psych evaluation and realized that the one in the plain dealer, he had lost 40 pounds. What causes a person to lose that much weight in 4 years or 3.5 years? It's because he smoked crack cocaine as well.
Did she get to see Did she get to see the picture of his psych evaluation?
No, actually, I showed her this photograph, and
This
within
is the
a split
psych
second.
evaluation? Which one is the
No,
psych?
this one here.
Okay, that's
Well,
the psych.
this one also Anthony Sowell, but this is the one I pulled up the internet. This is an earlier photograph, shortly after he got out of prison,
Okay.
where he hadn't lost the weight.
Yeah.
Because he got out of prison in June of 2005.
Okay.
The attack was June of 2006. So he's pretty much still healthy.
Okay.
When I showed her this photograph, within a split second, she said, "That's my attacker."
When you showed her this one,
Yeah. I said, "Vernice, this picture and the one in the plain dealer,
are the same.
they're the same guy."
How was her reaction when you told her that?
Well, she said, "That's my attacker." I said, and I told her, the guy that's in the news with the bodies at the house, that's your attacker.
Was she overcome with emotion?
Oh, certainly. There's no doubt about it. She was mortified.
How did
horrified.
you feel at that time? Did you feel like that you let her down and you gave up on her and then this happened? Did you have any of those feelings?
Well, I had mixed emotions. I mean, after all, if you're dealing with somebody that's an addict, they can turn your world upside down.
Yeah.
However, once the bodies was discovered at the Imperial Avenue, I think I was more devastated at the fact that Vernice was the messenger. She gave them Anthony Sowell on a silver platter.
Yeah.
He's a registered sex offender as of September 7, 2005.
Right.
Her attack is 9 months later,
Right.
which was a year before the Imperial Avenue tragedy began.
And you said he made her conduct oral sex. He never penetrated her. So thus, when they did the rape kit on her, they didn't have Anthony's DNA, so they couldn't
Exactly.
find a match.
Right, and I
So
think
they
that,
discredited her story because of that.
well, actually, at that time, now keep in mind, this is 2006. They don't capture Anthony Sowell until November 2009, 3.5 years later. Her case, 4 months after the attack, was suspended. So she has just a nameless, violent sexual predator still at large. But one thing that really gets me is her attacker was always on the books. They have his photograph and his address. Had the investigation been a little more thorough.
The whole time they had his address and his photo.
Yes, indeed. Why did
Wow.
now? This is the sex crime unit, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying it earlier. we do respect the police. We were grateful for the hard-working men and women
Yeah.
that put their life on the line every day.
Yeah.
But when you have cases where there's mistakes,
Yeah.
missteps, poor communication,
Yeah.
that has devastating consequences on the community,
Yeah.
somebody needs to be held accountable for that.
Now, when Vernice found out about the other women that been murdered, did you have a conversation about that?
Oh, she was crushed. She was
crushed.
devastated.
What were some of the things she was telling you?
Well, for one, she said, knowing what he did to her, I mean, in the news, they just simply said badly decomposed bodies were discovered. Vernice knows the process of the attack, what he did to her.
Cut her face with box cutter. Now, you were
Yes.
telling me that she told you that she was walking. Tell us that story, how she ran into Anthony and how the attack began.
Well, she was standing on East 79th and Kinsman, doing like I say, addicts do, soliciting. Sowell watched her. He told her when he approached her, I saw you get in and out of cars. So keep in mind, before Sowell did his 15 years, he was very familiar with Garden Valley. And so he knew, you must be an addict. And those were the type of victims he wanted to target. Because he would approach them like he did with her and say, hey, I got money and drugs for you. Why don't we go to my spot and we can have a good time?
Right. So that's what he told Vernice.
That's what he told Vernice. So he says to her, follow me. They go down Falcon Alley, which there's shrubbery and greenery on both sides, so there's no houses. No one actually sees them head westward down Falcon Alley. But when she reaches the end of the alley, she sees an abandoned house. And she realizes he's lured her to an abandoned house, and she refuses. She says, I'm not going in there. I thought we were going to a regular house. Well, Sowell insists, it'll be okay. She says, no, the deal is off. So she turns to go back in the opposite direction. She takes a few steps. He catches up with her. He puts the box cutter, the blade, right to her throat. And he threatens her and says, if you don't go inside, I'll cut you right here.
I'll cut you right here.
Yes, I'll hurt you right here. So she's thinking, okay, he forced her inside the house. They go up to the upper floor. He demands that she hands over her jewelry. He demands that she takes off her clothes. That was one of the cues that really set me off. Because I read the other survivors, that was one of his catchphrases. He would tell the victim, take off your clothes. He wouldn't touch the clothes because he was careful not to leave any DNA. Have him do it. Then he demanded that she give him some head. And in the midst of that act, he began to choke her.
Sister, you couldn't bite him?
Well, he's got a box cutter. She's fearful.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a big guy. Keep in mind, he's 6 feet tall, 200 pounds.
Yeah,
Look at her.
Yeah.
She's a small woman.
yeah, yeah,
Okay?
yeah,
6 feet tall, 200 pounds at that time,
Yeah.
because he hadn't lost the weight yet.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
So, and she's thinking, hey, he's going to have sex with me, leave me alone, and that's it.
Yeah.
But see, he had a different agenda. It
'Cause
was
he
about the violence.
He wasn't only a sexual predator.
He was
but
about
a
violence,
A
yes.
violent predator.
He
what
wanted
what
to
did
see-
he do to Vernice?
Well, I think the news article catches it well. It says the woman was taken to the hospital. She suffered deep facial cuts and a possible concussion.
Wow.
He beat her, and he's lacerated. And I try to blur it out because it's just too graphic to be on the front cover, but you can actually see the injuries inside the book. But from the crown of her head to her chin, multiple lacerations, cuts, slashes.
Did she? Okay.
But
Now-
fortunately for her,
all right.
he did that while she was unconscious. The first step was the choke. Then he reached for a cord, which is now in police evidence. He reached for a cord, I think it was a window cord, wrapped around her throat, tightened it until she blacked out. While she was unconscious, that's when the beatings and the lacerations occurred.
Beat her and cut her after she was
Well, once I
unconscious.
realized that it was a conflict of interest for the sex crime unit and that they basically covered up her case and didn't want to have any connection with the fact that they dropped the ball
Yeah,
and that this was the pivotal case that could have prevented that tragedy,
yeah.
I said, well, let me talk to Anthony Sowell himself. Now he's
What were
convicted.
you hoping to do, and what did you ask?
Well, I was hoping that after his conviction, that perhaps he had a change of heart
And tell the truth.
and tell the truth. So I asked him about this particular cold case. His response was, "Dear Charles Newton,
Let's read it. Read it, Charles.
sure, you're fishing, but you're not very good at it. You need me. I don't need you. And I do confirm that I don't give a damn about your impact statements and your alternate endings, being a community activist. You're just out to make money. P.S. Have a nice day. Death Row Sowell."
Now, hold on. Now, what's up with Vernice right now to this day?
Well, Vernice she's having a tough way to go. I mean, to be honest, she's still dealing with depression.
Even more so now.
Well, she knows that the other survivors were represented. And furthermore, the sex crime unit at first told her she was going to have a lineup of Anthony Sowell and her case would go to a grand jury. That's in the later chapters of the book. She was promised that.
Right.
So we actually went down there. I think this is August 31st, 2011.
They
The
didn't
trial
wanna
had
get
just
sued.
ended. But superiors inside the sex crime unit decided that's not going to happen.
Right, because they didn't want to get illuminated that they dropped the ball.
Exactly. But the reality is, that amounts to obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
That's
pretty much
against
so.
the law.
Pretty much
There's
so.
enough facts and evidence here, even more than some of the other survivors had.
Now, you helped her get into rehab.
Yes. Vernice, which I have in the
So
book.
CD then, this was after it all happened,
Exactly.
and you convinced her to go get help.
Once you experience a tragedy like this is a life-changing moment right here.
So she went
Absolutely.
and got help. Did you go to her with some of her meetings?
Oh, absolutely.
You did?
Yes. Yeah, I visited her, taken to many of her AA
Are you
meetings.
still friends to this day?
Yes, I am.
Okay, but you're not intimately close.
No.
Okay.
At this point in time, I consider myself her gladiator for justice.
Okay, so you're working in tandem with her. Now, she knows about your book.
Oh, absolutely.
She's
Yes.
fond of your book. She's supportive of your book.
She's fond of it. She supports it. She considers what I'm doing as a way to get her in that courtroom to get her justice and closure. She wants to be able to look this man in his face and tell him what he did to her, and at the same time hold the sex crime unit accountable.